Chapter 10 and 11, the vision of the king of the north and the king of the south. And here is a brief explanation of prophecy that we find in Daniel 10 and Daniel 11. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel. And he wrote, I was by the side of the great river, which is Edekel. Then I lift up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz, and I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. The same man told Daniel in Daniel 10, Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days, for yet the vision is for many days. The man clothed in linen, the way it is described is the same description as Revelation chapter 1 when John saw Christ. And we know that linen has to do with the high priest, the robe of the great high priest. In chapter 11 of Daniel, verse 27, we read, And both these kings' hearts, the king of the north and the king of the south, shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper, for yet the end shall be at the time appointed. And the prophecy as being for the latter days and for many days is confirmed in the letter of Mrs. White, number 57, in 1896, which is 52 years after 1844. The light that Daniel received direct from God was given specially for these last days. The visions he saw by the banks of the Ulai, from the chapter 8, and the Edekel, which are chapters 10 to 12, the great rivers of Shinar are now in process of fulfillment, and all the events foretold will soon have come to pass. In the same frame of thought as being applicable for a future application, we read, The world is stirred with the spirit of war. The prophecy of the 11th chapter of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. Soon, the scenes of trouble spoken of in the prophecies will take place. The present is a time of overwhelming interest to all living. Rulers and statesmen, men who occupy a position of trust and authority, thinking men and women of all classes, have their attention fixed upon the events taking place about us. They are watching the relations that exist among the nations. They observe the intensity that is taking possession of every earthly element, and they recognize that something great and decisive is about to take place, that the world is on the verge of a stupendous crisis. And listen to this one. The calamities by land and sea, the unsettled state of society, the alarms of war are portentous. They forecast approaching events of the greatest magnitude. The agencies of evil are combining their forces and consolidating. They are strengthening for the last great crisis. Great changes are soon to take place in our world. The final movements will be rapid ones. Daniel 11, and how to understand the king of the south and the king of the north. In Daniel 11, verses 5 to 14, we are introduced to two titles, the king of the south and the king of the north. And not until we get a correct perspective on these titles, in verses 5 to 14, can we apply these same titles with understanding as they apply to the end time and to our own days. In the days of Medo-Persia, Gracia, and pagan Rome, God's people lived in the Holy Land. They were the geographical center of prophetic utterances in Old Testament times. To the south of Israel was Egypt, and to the north was Syria. It is always in reference to God's people that prophecy must be understood. Therefore, the king of the south referred to Egypt to the south, and the king of the north was Syria to the north. Egypt, king of the south, struggled against Syria, king of the north, to become the fourth world empire, which means Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and then they were expecting Egypt to become the fourth world empire. In like manner, the king of the north and the king of the south are struggling today to become the last great world empire at the end of time. And we're talking the New World Order here and the Holy Roman Empire. But neither Egypt nor Syria became the fourth great empire. History proved that it was Rome, rising from the west, which fulfilled the prophecy. And Daniel 11 describes in great details the methods by which Egypt and Syria, and later on Rome, her allies and opponents, fought, made alliances, entered into leagues, intermarried, by intrigue and other ways. They sought to become the fourth great kingdom till it was defeated in 1798. This battle is going on to this day. Historical events which form the secondary application of Daniel 11 are now passing on to present-day events or primary application, and must be studied with the same continuous and perfect sequence as the previous expositors of prophecy have proceeded in their historical accounts. We saw that the word abomination meant Rome, especially because of Luke 21:20. And we are told in 1904, this was written in 1904, that the prophecy in the 11th chapter of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. In the 30th verse, a power is spoken of that shall take away the scepter, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. So that situates us with, again, the scepter, which is part of the Greek controversy, and Rome. Rome, who is to take his place again in history. Now, what is the enigma in Daniel 11? What we're going to be looking at right now is Elam and Iran connection. The king of the north and the king of the south are not the enigma, but the long-lasting biblical conflict between Shem and Abraham descendants till now is the enigma. Thus says the Lord of hosts, behold, I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. In the Bible, the word Elam appears several times from Genesis to the book of Acts 2, verse 9. Elam was one of the sons of Shem, Noah's son. In Genesis 14, a battle is recorded between Abraham, which was of the descendant of Arphaxad, and we saw that earlier in our study. Arphaxad was one of the sons of Shem, and a confederation of king, Chedorlaomer, was listed as the king of Elam, who took part of the battle against Sodom, Gomorrah, and Zoar, and involving Lot. The prophet Daniel was in Shushan in the province of Elam when he had a vision, which we saw in Daniel chapter 8, verse 2. So what is Elam? Elam is an ancient geographical location mentioned in the Bible. Today, it would be mainly in Iran, with a small section in Iraq. Elam is actually the son of Shem, the oldest son, but it's also a geographical location in the Bible. It bordered with the ancient Babylonian Empire, and the actual location of Elam would be today the very northern end of the Persian Gulf and down along the west coast of Iran. One of the main sections of ancient Elam would include Bushehr, which is a province with the capital city of Bushehr. And on a map of the Persian Gulf, Bushehr would be directly across from Kuwait. Right now, Elam, Iran, is a fierce enemy of Israel, and they want to wipe Israel off the map. And literally, a nuclear reactor sits in Elam for the purpose of destroying Israel. And Elam is considered Israel's most dangerous enemy. Daniel 11:38 introduced a new kind of a God, the God of forces, of military powers. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. Seems to be a very materialistic God, isn't it? And now, are we to expect another Star War or a war of the fallen stars? Elam, we're told, represents the Arab nations. Ishmael, the son of Abraham through Hagar, by the way she was an Egyptian, was a man of bow and Arab. Daniel mentions the God of the king of the south as the God of forces or military powers. And we're told that right now Islam is the authority over Elam, as Iran is the center of militant Islam. So Islam, you realize, is the religion, and Elam are the people who have adopted that religion of Islam, so that makes them Muslim. And Iran is the center of militant Islam. It's a known fact of history. Now, as we look at the king of the north, king of the south, and Jerusalem, let's go first to the chart on the right, where it talks about the king of the north being the UK, France, Russia, USA, and the Allies. So you may want to look on the map now for a minute, where it does present the same people. We can see them clearly, where we see the UK, and France, and definitely Russia, and the USA by the Atlantic Ocean there, and the Allies. And on this map too, we're indicating the king of the south, which if we repeat the same pattern as World War I, which could be very possible, we will have Germany, the Caliphate of the Islamic State of Iran, and the Middle East allies, along with Italy and Japan and Asia, of course, who still want to be the first. Everybody wants to be the first. So we see here that the Caliphate, even on the map, it's well indicated. If you look carefully, you will also see not only the king of the north with his allies, but also the king of the south. And that is being Germany, and being the Caliphate of the Islamic State of Iran, and the Middle East allies, and Italy and Japan. So look carefully to those actors, because they will probably come on the scene very, very soon, and we need to be ready. And now in this same chart, I am giving you what is Jerusalem for the Muslims, for Rome and the Jews. For the Muslim, Jerusalem represents the Dome of the Rock. And it's also the coming of Mahdi to Fatima. Fatima was the daughter of Muhammad, and Muhammad supposedly have died, and he's supposed to reappear actually by where the Dome of the Rock is today in Jerusalem. So they're expecting the coming of their Mahdi through Fatima, and also Jesus, which is kind of interesting. And then Rome wants to set up their headquarters again. For a long time they have been wanting to, for the Vatican, with the coming of the 8th Pope of Revelation 1711. Now, next to be seen is the Jew. The Jew, they have planned too. You know, all of these people have a plan for Jerusalem. Muslim, Rome, Jews. For the Jews, Jerusalem represents the new temple site. They want so badly to have a temple again. And they're not expecting to just look at this temple. They're expecting actually to offer sacrifice in it, like the old days, because they have never recognized Messiah. So now they're expecting another Messiah, except there is only one problem to their scenario, because Messiah has come already, the anointed one, the one who redeems those who accept him. And then we know that definitely that's not going to be the right Messiah then if the Jews are expecting that. So it's going to be interesting to see the outcome of all this matter. If you allow me, I would like to do a present-day application of Daniel 11 at this time between the Middle East, Israel, and the West. In Daniel 10:14 we read, "Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days, for the vision is yet future." A brief history of modern Middle East conflict will show us some very, very important points to pay attention to even today. The modern history of the Middle East began after the end of World War I. Following the war to end all wars, which that's what they were calling World War I, the Ottoman Empire that had ruled the Middle East for 400 years came to an end. The Ottoman Empire of the Turks had at various times ruled from the Middle East to Persia and from North Africa to southeastern Europe. The empire was in decline by 1914, and its defeat came at the end of World War I in 1918. With the breakup of the old empire, a number of new nations were created by Britain and France, which were the allies in the First World War with USA and Russia, and they were approved by the newly formed League of Nations. These nations, listen to this carefully because those are new nations that were created by Britain and France after the Ottoman Empire fell. And these included Iraq, Lebanon, Kuwait, Syria, Transjordan, and Turkey, which is very interesting because it's Britain and France who basically more or less created them. And Egypt was a British protectorate at the time and became independent in 1922. Now, if you look on the map, if you're like me, you must be wondering who will wield the scepter, the daily. Let's start with number 1 on the left by Israel, because you will see all these countries are there today. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, which we talk about in the news quite a bit right now, Kuwait, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, and finally Egypt. This would be what you would call the Middle East in a nutshell. And of course, Shem with Arphaxad, Abraham being a descendant of Arphaxad, was also the father of the Hebrew nation and the Hebrew religion. And today we call them the Jews, and they're established in Israel. Now, if we go to the side of Iran, you will see Shem with his descendant, his first son Elam. And these, from Elam, the Arab nation stemmed, and also the Islam religion. So we have the Arab nations, the Islam religion, and the Islam people, the people who observe the Islam religion, they're called Muslim. And of course, we have seen that Iran plays a very important role under the Islamic religion and also under the Caliphate, the new formed Caliphate. As for the Hebrew nation, on the scepter of Abraham and Sarah, we have established that Abraham is the father of the Hebrew nation, and through Sarah, which we're told in Galatians 4:22-26, she is the mother of freedom. She is basically represented as Jerusalem. The Arab nation, the scepter through Abraham and Hagar, this is what formed Arabia and Ishmael. Because in Galatians, again, Paul mentions how Hagar is the representative of the woman of bondage and also Arabia. So that's why you can connect here again Abraham between Isaac and Ishmael, and then if you want to, between Arphaxad and Elam. So there is always this double conflict, you could say, even among the Middle East people. And that's why some of them allied later on with some, and some they will go with Europe, even like the Ottoman Empire did during the First World War. Very, very interesting time we're living in, isn't it? The question is, who will wield the scepter? Be aware that ISIS restored the caliphate in June 2014. After the First World War, as we saw, the Ottoman Empire was defeated and it lost its title of caliphate on March 3, 1924, when the government of Turkey exiled all the members of the House of Osman, promptly ending all traces of the Ottoman Caliphate and the empire. But we see now some caliphates rising again. ISIS stands for Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, and it's an extremist militant group that ruled by Wahhabi or the Salafi law. ISIS is a jihadist group which challenged Al-Qaeda as it changed name to Islamic State. Islamist militants have declared an Islamic Caliphate in an area straddling Iraq and Syria, trumpeting the declaration in several videos. As mentioned, Nursi and Turkey and the restoration of the old Turkish Caliphate seems to be in the making, as ISIS seems to meet with defeat. Though sponsored by Turkey, a new star is rising in the east which points towards Turkey and another type of caliphate with apparently a more moderate governance. Unlike the others who emphasize violent jihad to accomplish their goals, Nursi, which we saw and who lived from 1877 to 1960, he emphasized things like science, good deeds, and interfaith dialogue. In this regard, Nursi is the father of what we should call Turkish Islam. Instead of confronting the West world with acts of jihad and violent resistance, Nursi sought to create a form of Islam the West would welcome with open arms. It worked like a clockwork. The West took the bait and swallowed the hook. And this was the kind of Islam the West wanted to champion. A moderated, as we said earlier, decaffeinated, Christianized form of Islam. And I may add that the reason why the West took the bait and swallowed the hook is because it's the same approach as Papal Rome. Papal Rome did exactly the same thing in the 1960s, and notice the timing. 1960s with Vatican II brought exactly this form of moderated, decaffeinated, Christianized form of Christianity. So you can see that there is a correlation here, as we mentioned earlier. They are definitely major reason to believe that Islam was established by the Papal Rome, and now we know that Papal Rome and Islam are going through the same type of a transformation in order to be more attractive to the Western secularized nation. Taking the baton from Nursi, a highly charismatic imam named Fethullah Gulen, which was born in 1941 and is still alive today, he dramatically now expanded upon all of Nursi Bediüzzaman started. Though preaching a more nationalist message than Nursi, Gulen also preached an Islam intermingled with an emphasis on education, science, charitable acts of kindness and service, and its greatest outreach tool, interfaith dialogue, which is the same as ecumenism in Christianity. So now Islam is more palatable for Christianity because they want to be all of the same truth, same faith. And even Christianity has accepted that Islam with Allah, they believe is the same creator God that we claim in Christianity, the only one, which is Christ our Redeemer. And we know this is not so. And this is basically the theme of Gulen, which has established many schools in the United States and throughout the world, and its purpose is to infiltrate the very arteries of the system of society and government, and to lay in wait until the most important time to retake Turkey from the secularists to ultimately reestablish the Turkish-led caliphate. Ironically, Gulen today lives in rural Pennsylvania, as it was mentioned, under the protection of the U.S. government. There are also over 120 charter schools in the USA alone under Gulen organization. It also reminds me of the purpose of Russia, and when it was expressed just before the apparent fall of communism, it was expressed actually by the military school in Russia, where they were to infiltrate the very arteries of capitalism, and when they will not suspect it, they will crush capitalism with their fist. And this is what we see happening under the movement of Gorbachev since 1991. Open your eyes and see. So we have many attackers here of capitalism, which comes from Islam, which comes from Russia, and the question is, who will the scepter? Continuing to attempt to answer the question, who will wield the scepter, we see an army of black flags, the Muslim Messiah, and an army of locusts to punish God's people. Is Erdogan the new caliph of modern Turkey? With regard to the rise of Erdogan, which is now the president of Turkey after being the mayor of Istanbul and the prime minister of Turkey, what must be understood is that it was specifically this vast throng of Nursi and Gulen supporters who created the very backbone of Erdogan's support. The Gulenists had followed their leader dictates and infiltrated virtually every sphere of society. As recently as 2012, President Obama named Turkey current President Erdogan as one of his top 3 closest friends among world leaders. A quick 5 years later, Erdogan has emerged as one of the most dangerous dictators of our day. Now that Erdogan has attained absolute power over Turkey, the moderate character that he played to win the support of the Western world is no longer needed. His mask has been removed and his true colors revealed. Now he's free to openly threaten European leaders. After 16 years in Afghanistan and Iraq, with American military resources drained and well over 4,000 American soldiers dead, one could argue the region is in a worse condition than when we first began. But here is the kicker. The Taliban and Saddam Hussein are small compared to Turkey. This is a nation that has the largest army in the Middle East. According to the author of this article, it's his understanding of biblical prophecy that the very monster that the United States helped to create is going to be a lot more than the world can handle. So this is what he's questioning right now, and we do question the same things. This article actually is very recent, of August 16, 2017. Now the next question is, are ISIS and Turkey forming the Jihad Caliphate for the Mahdi? The Mahdi actually is a very interesting study, which is basically the Muslim Messiah, and they're expecting him to ascend to power, and it's said to be preceded by an army from the east who will be carrying the black flags or banners of war. Sheikh Kabani states, Hadith indicates that black flags coming from the area of Khorasan will signify the appearance of the Mahdi is nigh. Khorasan is in today's Iran, and some scholars have said that this hadith means that when the black flags appear from the Central Asia in the direction of Khorasan, then the appearance of the Mahdi is imminent. The chairman of the Islamic Supreme Council of America continues, the coming of the Mahdi is established doctrine for both Sunni and Shia Muslim, and indeed for all humanity. Keep in mind that this is the belief of Islam. The Mahdi will then lead this army to Israel and reconquer it for Islam. The Jews, according to this writer, will be slaughtered until very few remain, and Jerusalem will become the location of the Mahdi's rule over the earth. He will be a descendant of Mohammed and will bear Mohammed's name, which is Mohammed bin Abdullah, descendant from Fatima, the daughter of Mohammed. He will lead a world revolution and establish a new world order. Here we are again, another new world order. He will lead military action against all those who oppose him. He will invade many countries, and he will fight holy wars. That's what the jihad stands for. He will cause Islam to be the only religion practiced on the earth. And he will announce righteousness and justice. Doesn't it sound like the purpose of Christ? So we're all mingling all of these right now between Islam, and we have, of course, Christianity of Rome that's expecting to do the same. So we're in for something very interesting, and it's happening right now.